All right, great. Why don't we get started? So welcome everybody today to this virtual event, this global event, launching the local peacebuilding thematic review. My name is Brian Williams, and I'm the chief of the financing for Peacebuilding branch, so head of the Peacebuilding Fund here in the Peacebuilding Support Office in the Department of Peacebuilding and Political Affairs at the United Nations. Very excited to welcome you all today. The Peacebuilding Fund considers itself to be a learning organization, and as part of that learning, we try to do regularly thematic reviews that look at our portfolio across all the countries that we're working in. We've done that since the beginning in 2006. For our current strategy period, which is 2020 to 2024, we're trying to do up to 2 such thematic reviews every year. Last year in 2021, we did manage to do a gender-responsive peacebuilding review on the role of women in peacebuilding, and a second one that we're now slipping into 2022 on local peacebuilding. The local peacebuilding review that we're excited to be launching today was not only reflective of our commitment to being a learning organization, but it was also about our interest in doing a better job of engaging youth in all aspects of our work. So, not just being, let's say, the objective of some of our programs, but also being involved in design and monitoring and thematic review. So this approach this year, we partnered with a couple of different organizations, Peace Nexus Foundation, we're very grateful, and UN Volunteers. And with UN Volunteers in the several countries where we did the research, we recruited youth volunteers who then worked with some senior researchers to undertake the actual work and do some of the interviews and the analysis, which we're going to be presenting today. We had UNVs recruited in 5 different countries: Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Kyrgyzstan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also in the territory of Kosovo. The research team, when it was all put together, included, and I think they're here today, so I'm just going to say their names out loud quickly so they get a little recognition: Christophe Kurtz, Vanessa Colazzoli, Andrea Marinkovic, Blaise Bazgabagre, Cynthia Zo, Diedon Nija, and Medina Abkilkasimova. Ooh, sorry about the last one. I'm doing okay until then, I think. Apologies if I didn't get any of the names quite right. So thanks to the research team. We only have an hour today, and I don't want to spend too much time. We're lucky to have local young peacebuilders on today's panel. They're not the researchers, but young peacebuilders in those countries concerned that were part of somehow the project were interviewed from Kyrgyzstan, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Burkina. I'm not going to introduce them because that'll happen later. Normally what I would do at this point of my remarks is say 2 or 3 highlights from the research itself. But luckily we have a video, a nice animated video that's going to do that for us. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to say thank you again to all the researchers. Thanks to our panelists for joining us today at whatever hour it is, wherever you are. I'm going to pass over to colleagues who are going to put the video up, and after the video, Tammy Smith, who is on screen, is going to moderate the rest of the session. So thanks again to everybody involved in this wonderful activity. I can tell you we're already working on putting into practice some of the lessons learned, and it's an experience. The whole experience is something that we want to learn from and repeat and do better on in the future. So thanks to everybody. Thanks for joining us today, and over to the video.
It's no secret that for peace to be successfully built and sustained, peacebuilding and conflict prevention efforts are needed at all levels: local, national, and regional. But what does local peacebuilding mean? Within the UN Peacebuilding Fund, local peacebuilding is commonly described as efforts at the subnational level or actions that engage local civil society, including women, youth, or volunteer groups. A thematic review on local peacebuilding, commissioned by the Peacebuilding Support Office in partnership with Peace Nexus Foundation and UN Volunteers, provides a number of lessons. If you want to develop a local peacebuilding project, the project design process should be inclusive and engage diverse stakeholders. Identify local partners you may not have worked with before by conducting stakeholder mappings. In reaching out to local partners, use the terms meaningful to local communities to define the desired peacebuilding change. Allocate direct funding to local civil society partners, and make sure to recognize and support volunteers who are key to the sustainability of your project results. The review identified 2 of the most common approaches to local peacebuilding that the PBF is asked to fund: supporting local peace structures and improving intercommunity or state-society relations. When establishing or strengthening local peace committees or similar structures, make sure that these mechanisms are financially independent once the project ends. Local peace committees are often effective at resolving conflicts at the local level, but there are limitations to the types and number of conflicts that they can manage effectively. To create a sustainable change, the connections between local and national processes need to be deliberately built into projects. If your project is focused on improving intercommunity or state-society relations, you will most likely include awareness-raising activities, training, dialogues, or small grants initiatives, all aimed at building skills and changing attitudes or behaviors. Simply bringing people from conflicting sides together can be effective. Community members and government officials often change the perceptions of women and youth when they witness youth or women-led peacebuilding action. But societal changes take time and effort beyond project implementation. Be strategic about the sequencing and scope of your interventions, avoiding one-off activities and striving to create a structural change. To learn more about the review and the work of the PBF, visit www.un.org/peacebuilding.
So thanks very much. As Brian mentioned, my name is Tammy Smith, and I head up a small team of design, monitoring, and evaluation specialists who support the Peacebuilding Fund both in New York and in the field. We hope you've enjoyed this video, and it's now my great pleasure to introduce our panelists today, all of whom are local peace builders in their country contexts. We've asked them to speak to a handful of the review's recommendations, and we very much appreciate the time and honest assessment of peacebuilding partnerships. First, I'd like to introduce Akmaral Satimbayeva, who is the co-founder and executive director of the youth NGO Youth of Osh in the south of Kyrgyzstan, which was established in 2008. Akmaral has 15 years of experience on youth empowerment and youth policy implementation. She has designed and led social projects in the areas of youth leadership, community service, civic education, peace building, youth entrepreneurship, and through which she's engaged over 35,000 young people through her organization. Next is Nikola Kandic, who is a local youth and peace activist from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He has more than 10 years of experience working with civil society organizations and local communities to undertake research and develop program models and advocacy strategies that promote human rights, reconciliation, and social justice. As a jurist with experience in law, media, and the non-governmental sector, Nikola tries to find new models for cooperation with young people and improving their position in society. And from time to time, he also writes short stories and novels. And rounding out our panel today is Lamusa Beyogo, who is a communications officer at Sudu Andal in Burkina Faso, a local civil society organization established in 2016 that is committed to youth empowerment and leadership, mainly through technology and computer training for youth, civic education, the fight against violent extremism, and environmental protection. Lamusa considers himself an activist and social leader committed to peace building in his country. Prior to Sudu Andal, he was a journalist reporter and a translator interpreter in military camps in Burkina Faso. Our first question today is for you, Akmaral. Akmaral, the thematic review highlighted some challenges that internationally funded peacebuilding projects face when trying to establish partnerships beyond capital-based, English-speaking larger NGOs. As a consequence, these larger organizations often crowd out smaller, more locally grounded organizations who may be closer to the community of a project that the project seeks to serve. The review also cautions that frequently local civil society partners are inadequately consulted when the project proposals are being developed. Akmaral, I'd like to ask you to share with us your experience. of working with internationally funded or UN-led peacebuilding projects. Do these critiques ring true? And do you have any recommendations for how we can improve our partnerships with local organizations? Akmaral, over to you.
Thank you, Tammy. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Peacebuilding Foundation, for such opportunity to hear the voices of local civil society activists and organizations from different contingents, countries. Yes, I do agree with the results and findings of the thematic review. Yes, in Kyrgyzstan, mostly the UN agencies are receiving the funding from Peacebuilding Fund, and I thought before that this is only for UN agencies. Yes, we have an experience of implementing peacebuilding projects funded by PBF, but through the UN agencies mostly. In some cases, UN agencies are consulting with local organizations, but not all the time engage deeply to the concept development process. And usually after receiving funds, they announce a call and competition among local civil society organizations. But this is already like with the set thematic frame, and NGOs should suggest approaches to achieve these set goals. And I know in Kyrgyzstan, there are some cases when the other non-UN organizations are received the funds, but they are also mostly international organizations who have only the representatives in the Kyrgyzstan. And this is very important issue, why local organizations should also receive directly funds, because mostly the accumulated experience, capacity building, expertise should stay during the implementing of such projects should stay in the country with the local organizations. And my recommendations is improve the access to the information, disseminating like information in local languages. The second, I think there should be online or offline sessions on the criteria, on the proposal guideline, and sometimes like some sessions on understanding the terminologies. And so by this, I think we should improve the inclusiveness of inclusive partnership, engaging civil society organizations in designing process. But during the implementation of the program, we should use more adaptive management according to some context change in the country, like political situation might be, conflicts might happen, government change in other cases. And I think also one more recommendation is to simplify the criteria when it's possible. When, for example, there is the mostly required like yearly budget, which is usually very high for the local organizations. So this is my recommendations from our experience in the country.
Thank you so much. Some really valuable insights for us from the view of a smaller local organization trying to partner with the UN. We're going to shift now, and I'll run through questions for each of our panelists, and then we will reserve time to either respond to some of the suggestions or to open it up for others to ask questions as well. So Nicola, the next question is for you. The review finds that local efforts to build trust between citizens and government can be effectively fostered through small grants, which can help decision makers deliver on some of the concrete demands expressed by citizens. This in turn can create short-term goodwill among the population. But as good as that sounds, the review cautions that such initiatives are not always sustainable if higher level political buy-in is lacking. Now, I understand that you yourself have experience with small grants through a PBF-funded project where youth and civil society groups in the Western Balkans implemented joint projects with municipal leaders. Given that experience, what kinds of peace building change did you observe as a result of the Small Grants Initiative? And is there anything that you would recommend to make such initiatives more impactful? Nicola, over to you.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for a question and thank you for invitation. Well, as you mentioned, in the previous years, I had the opportunity to be participant of some of the programs funded by PBF, but also to be someone who was a leader of organization which implemented the activities in a field. When we are speaking about communication, but between public administration, decision makers and the youth, that changed a lot in the previous years in Western Balkan 6 countries, because there's a lot of programs which support this kind of dialogue. And it is really important that we have such a dialogue, but as you mentioned, there is a problem that such a kind of dialogue is happening only at the local level, not at the national level or at the regional level, because we have some problems which are not only national problems, but also regional problems like a brain drain issue in the Western Balkan 6. And what is also second problem is that programs are not sustainable, that after a donor is not more here, after funds are not more here, we are stopping with activities. But what is good, what is happening in the field is that by programs like this, we support youngsters, especially in some small communities, to be recognized like equal partners. And that is great, because in two years ago, for example, I was the leader of the project which was called Culture of Dialogue between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there, like a mentor in a group for youngsters, was Minister of Education. And in that moment, when we have youngsters at one side and at other side one Minister of Education, that is great opportunity for youngsters to give the voice of the problems of youngsters in that specific society or country, but also give an opportunity for ministry to say what are possibilities for ministry, how they can improve situation. When we come to the local level, to the level of the local communities, that is a place where the change is happening in our region. But if we really want to have big impact, we need to work with the national bodies at the national level, because we need strategic approach to these questions. If we have strategic approach to these questions, not only in a kind of some strategy or document, then after that we need to ask our country or our countries, if we are speaking about regional problems, for money, because programs without budget are not something which will be effective. And what is always problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially, but also in all other Western Balkan 6 countries, is not that money doesn't exist. There is a problem that sometimes we don't know how to use money which already exists. And maybe in this context, we need to have more dialogue events between youngsters and public administration, because by that we will strengthen the relations between them and to try to establish co-management principle in decision making when there is a problem, when we are speaking about youth issues, because no one in the Western Balkan 6 can know better what is the need of the youngsters than youngsters who are living here. And I think that is the key. If we want to speak about peace building in a local community, what is good, what changed by programs by PBF is that we are not more only in a rooms and we are discussing about peace, about war, about dealing with the past. Now we are trying to discuss about some, to say, normal topic like love, what is happening in your life, but with the regional aspect and with the aspect of the dealing with the past and reconciliation. And that is something what is changing. And what is also good is that for the last 10 years, you can see that civil society organization in the Western Balkan 6 strengthened their capacities. So it is much easier to work these days in our communities. But as I said, we still need to find a way how to have strategic approach at the national or regional level, and help for that we can have in UN agencies, because UN agencies are really supportive in this process, sometimes like mediator between youngsters who are activists and government institutions at the other hand. And I believe that really with the great young activists in the Western Balkan 6, we can create this region like a better place for living. Thank you.
Many thanks, and a really good reminder that these initiatives don't happen in a vacuum, right? That we need to actually be looking at how what we're doing at the local level is related to what's happening at the national and the regional level. Thanks so much. And then finally, our third question today is for Lamusa. Lamusa, volunteerism was a big focus of the thematic review. The research showed that most participants of PBF-funded projects engage in activities on a voluntary basis and are motivated by altruistic values. In fact, one study found that 97% of people running youth-led peacebuilding organizations worldwide are volunteers. As a volunteer yourself, can you tell us what drives you to volunteer your time and efforts for peacebuilding? And how can governments and international donors better support volunteers? Lamusa, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the floor given to me. I would say, first of all, this is really a good question because most of the time we have been asked, why are you volunteering? Yet, you know, maybe there is no payment, something like that. So for me, it is a kind of commitment, a personal commitment to help my community. You may know it, in these recent years, Burkina Faso is experiencing terrorist attacks and so many other crises. So as a young person, what do I do or what can I do to help my community? What I can do from now is volunteering. And generally talking, I'm not alone. Most of the young people are ready to commit themselves to give their time, what they can do right now, because most of them don't have any source of revenue to give or to contribute. But what they can do is their time and also contribute by organizing some social activities. So I can say it's a kind of social commitment, a personal engagement for my community. I'm concerned by peace building in my community because I'm a member of this community, and right now what I can do is my commitment. A question has been asked also, what does the local volunteerism in Burkina Faso look like? I can say people are ready to commit. They are eager to act, to get involved in activities, organization. But the main problem, as I already mentioned, is they don't have any source of revenue. So what they're expecting from the local government or international donors would be a kind of support. The first support can be like skills strengthening. If it's possible to get some training sessions, some trainings program for the volunteers to get developed to strengthen their skills, it would be good. The second thing they can expect from the international donors and the local government would be a kind of financial support. As I already mentioned, they don't have any source of revenue, yet they are willing to organize some activities. Right, we can give time, we can give our strength, but we don't have financial support most of the time. So what we can expect from the government and international donors would be a financial support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is, I think, an excellent reminder of the kinds of motivation and commitment to community that volunteers are bringing and that motivates their action. And to try to be reminded also that support to these actors, in addition to the usual organizations that we partner with, is a meaningful sort of connection with a group of people that are really committed to helping change for the good of their local communities. Thanks so much. At this point, I would like to open the floor to any additional questions that people in the our listeners may have. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now. So let me maybe, as people are maybe considering different questions that they may want to ask, let me ask one additional question of maybe any of you. Nicola, you were touching upon a little bit this connectivity between national level, regional level, and local. But for each of you, how do you sort of understand local peace building, and where do you see it really being sort of different from nationally led peace building efforts? Are there sort of different qualities? Are there different considerations? And then maybe based on your experiences, can you share a specific example or an experience of an initiative that you were engaged in which you sort of found success in contributing to peace building? I don't know if maybe Akmaral, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Temi, for the question. So as I understand the local peace building, when it really goes from the grass and very integrated with local communities, with their tradition, maybe values, very natural cooperation of communities. This, what I understand, all the interventions go from the grass to up. But the national efforts, I understand that national peace building, that when the policy development of the government or region, like as a Central Asia, how we understand the peace building. So and for Central Asia, I think it's very important also to develop not only local, but as a region peace. Because since after the Soviet Union, since even we get this independence, but still the Central Asian countries, we have still unidentified really borders, and we still have this border conflicts between like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, or undelimited, let's say, borders. But here, both of approach are important, not only from the national policy, but also very important that we integrate our border relations from the grass as a like villages, people. The other point, the difference I understand in the approach. And for example, if we want to develop like women leadership or entrepreneurship among women, so make like create more economical opportunities or economical empowerment of women. So here we try to use family approach, our organization. So because not in all the communities in Kyrgyzstan, women are allowed to go too far from the home, from the village, and not really allow according to the tradition or religion values. So that's why when we use this family approach, like guest house running by the family, so this is approach that makes better integrate like peace building or other interventions with the tradition and values of the nation.
Thanks very much. And I see also there's a sort of comment in the chat that sort of your comments have triggered. We can come back to that in a moment. Nicola, I saw your hand up. Do you want to also?
Yeah, I also want to add something and a little bit compare this situation of the Western Balkan with the Central Asia and with any regional progress or national process. What is, as I said in my answer to previous question, changes are really happening at the local level. When we are thinking about national or regional level and we are thinking about peace building, we will put our goals at the level of vision. what need to happen sometimes in the future, what we can do to achieve that vision. But when we are thinking about the local peace building, about local peace building at the local level, then we can recognize concrete actions we need to take to establish peace, if it is possible to establish peace or to work on the establishment of the peace. And that is really important because, for example, right now I'm living in capital, and position of the youngsters in the capital, in Sarajevo, is not the same like position of the youngsters in a city where I'm born or where I grew up, because that is a city with 10,000 of people at the border with a high criminal rate in a society, and in capital city situation is not the same. And that is the reason why we need to have totally different approach to that different communities. Also, what is important is at the regional level to see what are opportunities for our region, what are, for example, wishes at that level of vision, because, for example, in the Western Balkan 6, it is really easy to speak about real conflict that happened in the past between some countries, because it existed. But when we are coming to the processes at the regional level, which include, for example, Albania, between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Albania, there was never conflict, or concrete conflict in the past, but still that doesn't mean that we don't need to work on a peace building, and that we cannot work at the level of the local communities in Albania and Bosnia and Herzegovina to compare results and maybe to copy paste results, not to copy paste because every community is different, but to try to reach different goals, different results with the same actions. And what is also good is that sometimes from community to community differs. Would we use art, sport, or maybe we will use that classical non-formal education way to work with the youngsters? That is really important, and that is the reason why local peace building for me, like a youth activist, is more important than that list of the wishes at the national or regional level. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I see that there's a question in the chat, and Lamusa, maybe if I can ask you to respond first, because it's a question that I think you're particularly well placed to address. So the question is, young people are ready to commit their volunteerism. Oh, wait, sorry. My screen just shifted. Okay. Young people are ready to commit their volunteerism, but there is not an opportunity. So the question is, how can they learn how to engage, how to be engaged in peace building volunteerism? What are the entry points, or how did you learn yourself about some of the opportunities that you've been involved in?
Okay, as I said previously, most of the time we are also asked the same question, because volunteering is not a kind of business. It's just a volunteering activity. It means you commit yourself. You are willing to contribute for your community, and most of the time there is no specific reward. But what I can say is a matter of motivation, personal motivation. If you feel like you need to do something for your community, you just do it without expecting any specific reward. And most of the time, the reward would come later. Yes, this is how I really committed in my community. And whenever I'm asked this question, or whenever I have opportunity to share my experience, I ask young people to just speak their heart, what they can do for their community without expecting something specific, because it's not a kind of rewarding immediately like money, or you have something at the end of your job. Yeah, it's just a social issue. So what you can do for your community, you can do it. And I'm really happy for that, because in Sudo Andal, what we did 1 year ago, we organized a kind of teaching activities for displaced people. And in less than 1 year, we could enroll more than 100 volunteers. And we are not paying them. We are just asking them to contribute for the community. We can see displaced people from the community. They move from their village to another village, or from a city to another city. due to terrorist attacks. What can we do to help them? We don't have money. We don't have something like that, but what we have knowledge. We can commit our time to teach them mathematics, English, French, and any other domain they're interested in. So I would just say there is no reward, it's just a social commitment.
Thanks so much. We also have on the line today one of our partners in the review. It's Lauren Phillips with UN Volunteers. And so she would also like to weigh in on this volunteerism question. Lauren, thanks.
Thank you so much, Tammy, and thanks for such an interesting question as well. I think Lamusa answered really well in terms of what are the opportunities, particularly at the local level, in terms of how do you find these opportunities to volunteer. You might have a passion for peace building, a passion for contributing to your own community or global community, but often it's kind of opaque or not very clear about where they are. So just a couple of suggestions from my side, and I welcome other people's views on this as well. Firstly, if you're a young person interested, there are often youth networks. So try to seek out who are the youth representative groups that are around, ask them for advice. They might know of different organizations that are volunteer-led that might not have a big profile, but they'll know about what certain needs are and what kind of work opportunities or volunteer opportunities that they have. Secondly, I'd also encourage people to look at what are the umbrella groups. So what are the, beyond peace building, which is such a broad topic, what are the areas that you're really passionate about, whether it's gender or climate, whether it's about social cohesion, what are these issues that really inspire you most, and look out for the umbrella organizations and reach out to see if they've got advice about what organizations exist in your area as well. Also, if you're not really even sure what those umbrella groups are, think about who the local leaders are in your community, whether it's from civil society leaders, whether it's from the different peace councils that might be around, and they may be able to provide kind of mentoring support and ideas about where some of these opportunities are. And finally, if you're thinking a bit more globally and perhaps not able to volunteer in person, there are other opportunities as well. And I don't want to do like a plug for UN volunteers, but we do offer online volunteering. A lot of other organizations do as well. And that could just be a couple of hours a week that you could give if you aren't sure exactly where to start. That might be a way to open up the volunteering conversations as well. So that's just a couple of reflections from my side, but it's wonderful to see that kind of passion for volunteering, and particularly when it comes to youth engagement with peace building. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Some really, really good tips. Akmaral, I saw you had your hand up, but for the moment, I'm going to give the floor to Brian to maybe respond to some of, and in particular, to maybe some of your recommendations. Brian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Merci, Lamusa, and thanks, Nicolas and Akmaral. Super interesting to hear your comments, and really appreciate your time. A few reflections on what you've all said. So I'm a big fan of, it's maybe an old-fashioned phrase, but learning by doing. And I think if we're not providing actual cash resources, financial support to local organizations, it's tricky to do that learning by doing. So, small organizations that have aspirations to be sustainable, to have larger impact, to make connections from local to national policy, like any of the organizations around the world, they want to grow, and you need to practice recruiting staff and organizing events and, getting audited and, showing other partners transparency and sort of practicing what we all preach, right? And you can't do that if all the UN does is organize a training for somebody else. So I'm a big fan of finding ways to provide meaningful financial assistance. That said, it's a tricky thing for us to do from New York, because for us to do it directly from New York, it means the organization's already got to be big enough. It needs to be already sort of big enough that it's got, audit reports and so on. So I'm really a fan of using UN organizations at country level to do this work. And I think they have other advantages too. They're much more likely to have relationships with networks of civil society that they can, use to spread the word or partner with. They're more likely, because they have national staff everywhere, to have local language capacity. And they can do things like visit organizations directly, which we'd love to be able to do from here, but so far we only have Zoom. We haven't figured out how to teleport just yet, so it's tricky for us to visit. I'm very conscious, though, what you said, Akmaral, about sometimes it's only at the end of a process that the UN organization sort of reaches out. And so, I hope some of my UN agency colleagues are online today. I think we need to figure out how to get, UNDP and UNICEF and UNFPA and IOM and ILO and UNESCO, how to do some of what you're talking about. How do they, with our support, our understanding financially, we need to be conscious about what we're asking for, results in 2 months or something ridiculous. But how can they do a better job of co-creating, about reaching out to organizations in some of that preparation process? So I think that's what we're trying to figure out how to do a better job of, is from New York, how to incentivize our national level UN partners to do a better job of, simply put, local peace building. I also liked, I think it was you, Nicola, that was talking about, what is our comparative advantage? Everybody's got plus good things and bad things. I think one thing the UN can do is maybe help convene some of those forums that create the opportunities for civil society organizations or young peace builders or local peace builders to have that opportunity to interact with senior level government officials. We can do that. Resident coordinators, that's why they get the big job, and representatives, is they should be able to create a space where ministers or governors, spend the time to listen to and hopefully, change some of their own policies and listen to local peace builders. So I think that's another thing that we should be putting pressure, you from below, us from above, on UN leadership at country level to create these spaces where volunteers, where local organizations can connect more with local decision makers and power brokers. I'd be interested to hear from you all, or I'm going to have to run here, unfortunately, in a couple of minutes. I have a meeting, but maybe you can, for colleagues, to discuss connections to local politics also. So, how can the UN do a good job of supporting local peace builders, but also protect itself from, accidentally or unknowingly suddenly finding themselves involved in local politics? We know that political parties have a lot of power over policy, and political parties have a lot of potential both for aggravating local conflicts, but also for doing good peace building. And so how can the UN work with you to also connect to local political parties in ways that are neutral and impartial, but also helpful? And, we don't want to just kind of be blind to the fact that, local politics have a lot to say over what happens. So maybe to put some of that back on the table. But really great. I'm sorry I have to go to another meeting now, but really great to see you all, and thanks for all of your participation.
Thanks so much, Brian. Akmaral, I don't know, you had your hand up prior, and then also if there's some thoughts about Brian's last question around this connectivity between local action, local volunteerism, local peace building, and the political.
I wanted to add to the question about the volunteerism that in the Kyrgyzstan practice, we have volunteerism when we have common issue, like COVID. It was one of the cases when the country, it doesn't matter on the age, a lot of people were volunteering, helping to doctors and so on. The other cases when, for example, in my city in Osh in 2010, it happened interethnic conflict. So we were just mobilizing young people from both ethnicities, Uzbeks and Kyrgyz. We've raised some money for flowers, and we start planting flowers, saying this is like, let's plant a peace in Osh. So this is more spontaneous volunteerism, I would say, and it's very important for UN agencies to invest to institutional development of like volunteerism institutions. So volunteerism, yes, this is on without payment, but in order there should be some institutions who are funded and who provide this opportunity for young people to try to be volunteers. So that's why volunteerism cannot be just for free. I mean, if we want to develop it in the country level, so make them really agents of change, like role models. So that's why I would suggest to invest for volunteerism also. And it's very important to, as Brian mentioned, for the capacity building of local organizations, like mostly funds, they give the money only for the project activities, to implement the activities, but UN agencies, they don't support the institutional development, so they don't give any like money for like capacity building audit or capacity building of staff of the civil society organization. This is very important if we want that civil society will be ready to receive directly, for example, funds and be more engaged in the designing and implementing of peace building projects. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Any other responses from our panelists on this point? Nicola?
Well, when I'm thinking about peace building volunteerism and about that, does volunteerism need to be paid or not? I think that volunteer actions don't need to be paid. I think that by law of volunteerism, if that exists in a country, volunteers need to be protected in that work conditions to say, and protected by law in any way it is possible. But I think that if we want to volunteer, then we need to ask ourselves, what is our goal? Why we are volunteering, to earn some money or to improve our society. I think that it is really important to see what is our goal at the end. But of course, what I don't accept is that sometimes volunteerism is like work, because sometimes you really don't have the strict line between work and volunteerism. Sometimes volunteers work more than it is needed, and in that cases, then we cannot talk about volunteerism. We can speak about modern slavery, I would say, because if you are working 8 or 10 hours and you are not paid for it, that is for me not acceptable. But what is really important is maybe to see different organizations, not only UN, but also OSCE or European Commission, if it is about European countries, offer different intern opportunities for youngsters. I think that opportunities need to be paid, that internships in organizations like representative of European Union or OSCE or UNDP, UNFPA, etc., need to be paid, and because that will help also people who are not from the capitals to have opportunity to join that programs. Because, for example, if you are from the small community and you want to apply for that program, you need to move to the capital city to pay your rent, to pay public transport, to eat eat every day because you cannot live from the air. And I think that is something what we need really to change and to put extra efforts to UN agencies, but also to other actors to give opportunity to youngsters to work. And what is second, I think what is really important when we are speaking about youngsters and if we want to empower them is that if we are looking for intern or someone who will work at a junior position in UN agency, don't ask that person 7 or 10 years of experience, because that is something what is happening in my country, in all countries in the region, that are junior positions which are not paid like a senior positions, and someone is asking from you 7 years of experience. And I'm not sure what is happening then. If you are senior, you probably need 30 years of experience. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I'm conscious of two things. So conscious of the time. Akmaral, I see your hand up, but I'm also conscious that very early on, there was a question in the chat that we would like to present again and to focus on in the time remaining. So if I can ask, I'll ask the question again, which is basically, how do local traditions contribute to or inhibit peace building efforts regarding youth participation? Akmaral, a little bit, you had touched upon the sort of impact of cultural traditions or sort of local community norms when you were discussing, but maybe to also open it up to Lamusa and Nicola, as well as you, about this question on cultural traditions and youth participation. Lamusa, can I ask you maybe to jump in? You were talking very much, like stressing very much the sort of motivational aspects about volunteerism. Can you maybe describe a little bit the dynamics that young people face when they go to participate in a sort of, the public sphere, when they are trying to engage? Are they met with a lot of like openness and interest, or is there some sort of distance between? And Lemus, I'm not sure, he may be having connectivity issues. So while we wait maybe for him, maybe just like take 1 or 2 minutes, maybe Akmaral and then Nicola, while we wait for Lamusa, and then we'll move to wrap up for today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So just a short notice, a comment on the Nicholas. I didn't mean that volunteerism should be paid. I mean that we need to invest to the institutions like local organizations who will create the opportunity for volunteers to serve. Yeah. So on the question about the tradition, I would also, in our experience, we use the approach of like using tradition or this culture as an approach, and we had a very nice experience after this ethnic conflict. After several years, we were thinking how to engage young people, how to integrate them, these different ethnicities and we just use the culture like music, hip hop, rap, media. So all the stuff that's interesting for young people, and they were mobilized not because they should be as a create friendship between the communities. They were mobilized because they have common interests. And by that, they were created several groups, subcultures. And after like 5 years, these people who participated in this peace project, they become very leaders. They start create some jobs, open their designing studios and so on. The other approach that we used was the cross-border conflicts with Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan is business approach. So creating business relations, supporting local entrepreneurs, and creating this trading, improving the trading. So traditions and culture, especially in our region as a Central Asia, this works very well.
Thanks very much. Just maybe we have 3 minutes left. Any final comments, Lamusa or Nicola, from your side?
I would try to be short and to answer to previous question, and that will be for the end, is that in the Western Balkans, in a previous time, in ex-Yugoslavia, there was a principle of unity and brotherhood, and today we have just principle of dividing nations, and that is a huge difference. And other thing is that we have ageism between people who are elderly people and the young people, and that sometimes they don't believe in youngsters, and that is something what is happening. And we also can speak not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in whole Europe about that, how much young people are in parliaments, in legislative bodies, and that just shows where youngsters are in our societies. And that is what we can maybe change at the national levels and put quotas or something like that and fight for our rights. So that is my comment for this question.
Thanks so much. So on behalf of the Peacebuilding Support Office and our partners on this review, Peace Nexus Foundation and the UN volunteers, I'd like to thank you all for your participation today, which has really helped us bring the review to life through the eyes of local peace builders. And for those of you listening in today, if you've enjoyed the webinar and are interested to learn more about these kinds of reviews, please keep tuned to the Peacebuilding Fund's social media outlets for the latest on the 2 new reviews in 2023 that are coming up on climate security and peace building, as well as human rights and peace building. So with that, we thank you all. We encourage you to find the review on our website and to digest it. Let us know if you have comments and thoughts. And with that, just thank you all for your participation.